What is going on, you guys, and welcome back to another live stream here on the Sergeant Tank YouTube channel, followed up by Fish Tank Barn. We got Mike in the house.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
So he made a trip over here from the east side of the state. Obviously, we're Michiganders, so we're here in the beautiful and sunny state of Michigan. Completely false. Today wasn't too bad, I would imagine. Probably
no, it was almost
here.
Close to 50. It was pretty warm.
Yeah, it's been surprisingly warming up here, which is nice. In the last week or so for us. We're not too actually far from the lakeshore. I mean, you're obviously more on the east side of the state, whereas we're here in the Grand Rapids, Michigan market. But we try to figure out, he came up, he was blessed me by his presence, bringing me some fish that I've been trying to acquire to add back to the bloodline. But that's not why we're here. We're not going to be necessarily talking about that. What we've tried to figure out is what this impromptu, more or less, live stream is try to figure out a topic that him and I could maybe feed off of each other on. And that was really a topic focusing on preparation and prevention with the event of catastrophic events, and especially our hearts go out first and foremost if you guys are not aware of Goliad Farms. They've been around in the industry for well over 50 years, and it breaks my heart to see the amount of stuff that they're going through there in their fish farm. If you guys are not aware of what I'm talking about, you can just put it in Google and YouTube, and they're going to pull up. So they've been doing updates. So I just want to put that out there. If you guys are in the means, whatever the case might be, just to share those videos out. There's a GoFundMe. Not being paid for by, sponsored by, nothing like that. But my heart goes out. I have been there. We will talk about that just from a business standpoint as well as a hobbyist standpoint. We'll get to that here a little bit later. But, yeah, so we want to thank everybody for joining us. That's kind of going to give you kind of an introduction of what our plan is to talk about. If there's anything I missed, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going to kind of talk about all of our experiences and preparation and going through basically, how to deal with it when it does happen. Sometimes it's beyond your control. So you just kind of deal with it, and we'll figure out, strategies to prevent it and then how to deal with it.
Exactly. So, again, prevention is exactly what it stands for. It's preventative measures to put in place. If you guys have followed me for any period of time, or even Mike on his channel for any period of time, we have both talked about the importance of preparation. I mean, he can talk about his ups and downs of, because it's kind of apples and oranges of what operation we have going on here versus what he has going. May be able to relate to some of you guys as well. So, again, we will be covering all of that. I do want to give just a few shout-outs here in the chat. Of course, without you guys here to support us in this live stream on a Saturday, it would not be possible. So, looks like we got Scott's Aquatics in the house. We got Pepper Creed Aquatics, Frank Dominguez. We got Gone Michigan Aquatics. So thank you guys very much. Please go ahead and put in the chat. We will do the format here if you follow this channel for any period of time. Typically, once we get through the actual topic itself, then we'll open up the floor to general Q&A if we have time for that at the end. So don't feel as if you're spamming the chat. If you need to ask a specific question or something like that, we will be periodically looking at the chat along the way so we can try to address those. So, again, thank you guys very much. We will get it a couple of minutes here because I know notifications, that sort of thing here on the interwebs, who knows? It's hit or miss. But we got Fisher in the house. How you doing? We got Maple Street Aquatics. Hello. So, yeah. I think I got... Oh, mains, tails, furs, and pins, if I said that right.
How's it going, Jess?
Hello, hello. So if you guys want to do us a favor, we greatly appreciate it. It was already shared through the Aquarium's live stream information page over on Facebook. Mike already shared that. I shared it to my community page. I didn't do a very good job as far as sharing anywhere else. So if you guys want to do a favor, you don't have to. Feel free to go ahead and share it out.
Yeah, definitely hard to go out to everyone down south as well. I did heard, other areas than just Texas getting hit by it as well. So obviously everybody, stay safe out there. If you're not used to the weather. I mean, up here in Michigan we are, but if you're not set up for it, it's definitely more difficult.
Exactly. I know what I kind of want to focus on as soon as he brought up the topic. I've covered it on different occasions here on my channel, but I've never had a conversation like this in this format. So it'll be interesting to see as we kind of brainstorm and we kind of feed off from one another of what some pros and cons may be and what may differ in our thought process and how we go about preventing certain things that take place. I'm going to kind of let you take the floor, putting you on the spot here.
Okay.
I'm going to let you kind of take the floor. And since, again, you guys got to keep in mind, I just want to make this clear, is the way our fish rooms are set up, it really is apples to oranges. He's got a fish barn, as some of you may be aware and some may not, is we've been dealing with an operation from a business standpoint and a hobbyist within our home. It's in a basement setting, which has its pros and cons as well. However, I've gone through my fair share of preparation, as well as losses, which I will personally discuss as well. So keep that in mind when we're talking here, and we're kind of providing some insight feedback for you guys. Is our layouts are completely different. The way it's insulated here, the way it runs, I would imagine we'll be discussing that, how we heat.
Yep,
I think kind of giving you guys a generalization of, without going into every single detail, is to keep those things in mind as you're kind of preparing for that. So I'm going to give you the floor.
All right. So what I generally have thought about is I actually, most people don't know this, but I did fail the fish barn. So this is actually Fish Barn 2.0. I tried to do some saltwater breeding out there back like 2011 timeframe or so. Had a heater fail, have to move the fish in the middle of February. Wasn't a good scene. So when I went out to build the barn and redo the barn, I literally laid out like everything that I could think of happening and having 3 ways to solve that problem. So for example, if I want a water change, how do I get water out there if the pipes freeze? So, I have a frost-free faucet on the side of the house that I can run a hose to if I needed to. Things like that. I mean, literally go through your mind in your fish room, whether it's outside or it's in a basement or wherever you have it, and just go through all the things you can think of going wrong, and like write it down on a piece of paper, spreadsheet, and just kind of lay out what you would need to get through that problem. And with me battling Mother Nature, along with everything else, that fish-related stuff, I was like, I need to have 3 ways to do that, or else it's going to be, it could be game over, right? And if you're living in Michigan and it's 10 below outside and you lose heaters, you're in a world of hurt, especially with 100 fish tanks. You're going to be struggling. So, and I just kind of go back to when I think of this topic, and I spent a lot of my time in saltwater, and I used to go to an event called Magna and sit with, listen to talks. And I will always remember this talk by Dr. Sanjay Joshi, where he's like, have a backup for everything, have a backup pump, have a backup heater, have a backup lighting, or whatever you need, because you don't know when it's going to happen, right? Sure. It could happen Sunday night at midnight, and and the way the mail system's been now, Amazon's not going to show up the next day. So you need to have that pump or that heater. If that's key to your system, you're going to need to have that on the shelf, grab it, plug it in, and be ready to go. It's one of those things where it's like, it's a lot easier. I mean, for example, I'll give an example. For me, I had a heater, like the main heater for the barn die, about 2 weeks ago. And, I had a backup heater. Literally, I had to go, to a different style. So I had to rewire it, but 2 hours later, I was back up and running. So that's one of those things where you just have to literally think through all the things that can go wrong, and you'll find more as you go through the hobby.
Exactly. Yep. Nope. I think that those are all great points. Everybody just chiming in, we definitely appreciate it. If you guys have liked it at this point, make sure you guys give it a thumbs up. Of course, as YouTubers, we have to throw that out there. Do us a favor. I think as we get going here on this topic, I know for myself, as we really start diving in, and really start opening up some dialogue, I feel that there would be some very valuable information that could potentially come out for some of you guys. So, yeah, with that being said, feel free to go ahead and share it out if you haven't done so already. The way that I look at, and the way I've, you know, talked about this before, is the importance. Before I kind of get into, I want you guys to take into account the diversification. So what I mean by that is the many different families and genuses of aquatic organisms that I have personally dealt with for many years here in the hobby, not only from a breeding standpoint, but also maintaining both from a business and a hobbyist point of view. And anybody that's been following me for any period of time here on the platform knows I drive home very two important aspects of this hobby. That is adaptation and conditioning. I have spawned as well as successfully raised up through generations livestock that the typical hobbyist or somebody new coming into the hobby may look at. Let's just take, for an example, a Rift Lake cichlid. I think oftentimes people really have a misunderstanding of the actual temperatures of where fish come from, because that's a lot of times what people focus on is wild caught specimens, where they're actually coming from in the wild. You got to keep in mind, though, most of the stuff that you're going to obtain from your local fish store, either farm raised, raised from individuals like ourselves, within a homebred setting, whatever the case might be in a vat type system. It could be a large pool type of ponds, that sort of thing. It's been years of development through adaptation and conditioning, is where ultimately the generations that follow, what you're doing is you're building up the genetic lineage to prevent some of those opportunities, whether that be elimination of genetic deterioration within that line, but also I look at it from the standpoint of ensuring that you're really conditioning those fish to be hardy in the event if temperatures or fluctuations within that system happen. And again, consistency is key. Now, preparation for us here, where we're at, we are fortunate enough is that we're on a gas supply system. If my electricity goes out, guess what? I have a 30,000 BTU I installed several years ago that heats the entire basement. Obviously, heat rises. I don't in our floor joists. My background is in construction as well, so I don't insulate in the floor joist. I let the heat naturally rise. If I insulated everything is a balance within our fish room. It would take me 8 hours just to explain everything that I have going on and the way it's actually insulated. Is where some walls are intentionally not insulated, like the floor joists aren't insulated. And you may have to insulate your floor joists. You may have to not insulate. You may have to use certain types of insulation. Again, what we're talking about now is prevention in the event if things do happen. Again, our hearts go out to those who are in this situation. I can tell you what I would do. I can tell you how I react to it, but hands-on practical experience, it's kind of a moot point if I start sitting here saying what would I do in that situation, because I'm not in that situation as they are in other areas of the United States and in the world, for that matter. All I can tell you is what I do here. And as most of us do, because most of us either have probably a fish barn, like Mike does, some type of shed system in a basement, whatever the case might be, it's probably going to be similar. The number one investment I'm going to tell anybody, actually two. The two most important investments, and I find this is just a pet peeve of mine, so no offense to anybody else out there. I'm telling you, if I go through a cost breakdown of what I've spent in this hobby, and I know Mike could probably do the same, you don't even want to even think about the numbers that him and I have both, and a lot of us here that are probably actively in the chat. And if you guys are new, I'm talking, I've been doing this hardcore since 2006. So again, I've never gotten out of the hobby. Of course, I've taken, some downsizing, upgrading. It's always changing based on, what we're doing from a business standpoint. With that being said, get yourself a generator. I'm not going to sit here and go through all the manufacturers and the brands I would recommend. Just do your due diligence, do your research, and you can find them at Harbor Freight. Again, not being paid for by or sponsored by, but you can find them. They're the Predator brand. very similar in the way the whole engine and everything. I want to say it's Honda. It's very similar to that. So with that being said, if you're investing even $1,000 or $2,000, and I'm telling you, anybody that knows, $1,000 or $2,000 is nothing when the upfront cost of what it gets to get going. And that doesn't include your livestock. We're not even talking about that at this point. If you can't handle spending $300 to even $500 on a generator just to run, you should already have a generator. The first thing, and this is just kind of me preaching here to you, if you're a new homeowner going to a house and you're already investing into that, because that is an investment, that's an asset. Even if you're paying on a mortgage or if you own it outright, buy yourself a generator, even if you spend $1,000. Like that to me is a no-brainer. When I hear people, and again, this is no offense, I'm just telling you flat out, to me, it's inexcusable when you've already invested so much you can't handle spending even $400 or $500 on a generator just to focus on the fish room. I can go on that more. The other thing is make sure, especially through power outages, and not even necessarily power outage, but more so your safety. Something I talked about before is a ground fault circuit interrupter. Preach on that time and time again. It personally saved my life multiple times. But yeah, so I'm going to turn it back over to him. There's probably something that he wants to share here with you guys. Thank you, everybody, for showing up on this Saturday afternoon live stream.
Yes, I mean, definitely, like Jeremy said, the generator, and have a crash kit. I mean, there's in my basement, there's basically a tub with blankets and, battery powered air pumps and whatever else you're going to need. Have like a little crash cart, I mean, we went through, I think it was 2014. It was before the fish farm, but there was a 4-day power outage.
Not to stop you, but I'm going to stop you real quick. We tested this out, you guys. There's a comment in here about the, sounds like you're getting feedback from both. That is, I apologize for that. If anybody else is getting that, a bit of an echo. Okay. What's happening is, and I'm not going to go through the back end of it. So what I'm going to do, we're going to do, so I apologize about that. That's the way it always goes. I've done several hundred live streams, and I'm telling you, I've used lots of different software, and it seems no matter how many times you test it, this is usually the way it goes once you hit that live button. So with that being said, I'm going to try one thing here, and hopefully this will resolve the issue, so you're not getting that echo, that reverb. So,
all right. So, yeah. So, like I was saying, it's basically you have the crash kit, and have like the solar blanket. If you need heat packs, battery powered air pumps, and those things. And if you have that, one thing to keep in mind, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but if you're in this situation and you still need that and you'd say you didn't have it, check your local bait shop, like for fishing, because they have them there for people who keep minnows. I mean, it's just probably, like, again, like I said earlier, just think of all the things that could go wrong and see what you can find. See what you can, literally map it out on a spreadsheet and map out the pain points and what would happen if it went wrong.
Can you ask them on your end about they probably can't hear me, but about the echo?
Oh, are you guys still getting the echo? Or is it better now?
You guys still getting the echo? Let us know. We want to make sure that we try to somewhat resolve this before we continue on.
It's good, but it seems like when you talk, then it echoes. Like it picks up on his feed a little bit.
Well, it shouldn't be doing it anymore because I have mine muted. Can you guys let me know in the chat? Still smidgen of echo, but does seem that's really strange. Yeah, because I tested it several times. Okay, well, I apologize about that, you guys. The only thing that we can do is we can go on the fly and we can share a mic.
Yeah, I mean, we could put it in the middle, I guess.
Well, all right. Maybe it was just what's that?
It's not too bad.
Okay. Mic sounds good. Mine, Is mine just coming a little too hot? No, not at all. Do not apologize whatsoever. No, this is important. Audio is important. So yeah, don't ever apologize for that. This is exactly anybody on our end that does live streams. Any one of you guys that do live streams yourselves, you know, whether you guys, yeah, don't ever trust me. Audio is one of the most important aspects when it um, comes to this. So yeah. All right. Well, seems like it's okay. Hopefully, you guys can hear me at least. So I'll just keep muting each one of our mics. Yeah, I apologize about that. I lost my train of thought. Where did you leave off?
I think we were talking about like the crash kit and
Yep, that's right. We're talking about power source, generators, that sort of thing. So, what I think at this point to kind of give you guys an understanding of myself, and then I'll let Mike share his experiences. So, one of the very first videos that I shared here on the YouTube platform, um, once I actually started putting up content a few years back, is I shared about a catastrophic event that took place no matter what I did. So I'm very familiar with preventative measures as well as active measures of treating various diseases and bacterial issues, and even to the standpoint of actually doing surgical procedures on aquatic pets. I'm just very comfortable with it. I've done quite a bit over the years. With that being said, I lost well over 1,000 of my specifically genetic lineage I've been working on for many years, my ancestral cirrhosis. So obviously, hence our logo, your Bristlenose plicos of various fin types and of different color morphs. And these were your common brown because they're very popular for many years in the hobby, especially on a wholesale basis. So when I was supplying several hundred every month to various locations, you can, without explaining the entire system that I was running on and that sort of thing, I can just tell you firsthand, it is a tough pill to swallow, for lack of better terms. But I got to a point to where I was pulling so many. Like I said, I stopped counting after about 1,000, and I just end up humanely euthanizing the rest of the livestock because there's just way too many issues. So, kind of a backstory, if you guys haven't heard of this, and that's a very watered down version, is I didn't practice what I preached when it comes to quarantine. I trusted the source, and of course, I would never mention that source. Things happen, and I didn't end up a very reputable source, but it was my fault. And I was on a over a 1,500 gallon system, and it's in one of my talks. It's as far as methodology, the fish keeping, specifically when it comes to your ancestral species within that complex of a centralized system, and how you can effectively raise up and grow out very quickly various types of aquatic pets for that matter. And I unfortunately did not quarantine. It was nobody's fault but mine. And after counting, like I said, well over 1,000, and just happened to scrap and start all over again. From that point, you can imagine the amount of time, of course, which I think most of us value our time more than money. I know for myself, value of your time is something you can never get back. And of course, from a cost standpoint, the potential of loss from a business standpoint of the amount, obviously, of selling that product and that sort of thing. So a lot of losses there. And right around that same time, I also lost Lyme bread. So even before I started with the species-free complex of your ancestral cirrhosis was your Neocaridina. So different, both Neocaridina and Caridina. I started working with those back in 2006, and I have ever since. Same thing like with your Ancestris and a number of other aquatic pets. And of course, as time goes on, you're going to go through ups and downs as far as losses. One thing I can commend, as we were saying earlier on, again, our hearts go out to Gouliet Farms. And again, what I'm going to do, and I'm not being paid for by or sponsored by whatsoever, is I will link any of that information down. My biggest goal is, I know IFG, Evan Alexander here on the YouTube platform, various people have put out. I'm not looking for any recognition. I don't need you guys, do whatever you need to do. But I'm just telling you, there's different avenues that you can go about supporting. The main thing is you got to keep in mind, this is somebody who is, in my eyes, somebody who really a staple into the hobby for many different people and for many different years. Just, I don't know him on a personal basis. I've met him before. But with that being said, Charles and that, his entire operation is just, it's devastating. So I can only imagine. I mean, I think anybody that has watched there, if you haven't watched, again, after this is done, I'll link for you guys so you can at least support in that way. I know that there's a GoFundMe. There's different avenues that you guys can do by watching the content to help support, to try to get them back on their feet so they don't get too discouraged, because they've gone through now at this point, being in Texas, I want to say at least 3 occurrences. And you got to keep in mind, this is somebody that's been in the industry for well over 50 years. So I think there's a lot of people have been kind of sharing that news, and that's kind of what gave us the idea to talk a little bit about my biggest thing. I know, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Mike here, is you have to understand losses are going to happen. And of course, most people, even if it's a goldfish or whatever, if it's an African cichlid, whatever the case might be, you may develop a bond, an emotional bond, because some people might look at it like a companion, like a cat or a dog or whatever the case might be, is to realize you are going to go through losses, just like that's life, unfortunately. All we can do as hobbyists, all we can do as aquarists is to do our due diligence and try to prevent as many opportunities as possible. And I mean, I could talk about this all day, but I'm not going to sit here and take up the whole stream. So I'm going to turn the mic back over to you.
All right. Yeah, so I've had it a few times happen, but mostly for me, it's been saltwater where I've had the huge wipeouts. But back when I first started, I'd maybe been in the hobby for like a year or so. I wiped out a whole 180-gallon tank, and I wiped that out. Basically, what happened is the solenoid stayed on a calcium reactor that I had, and basically, I tested the water, nothing was wrong, but I came downstairs in the morning to a 180-gallon tank full of dead fish, and so basically, what had happened is the solenoid didn't work, and it emptied the CO2 tank into the water, lowered the pH temporarily, wiped out all the fish because they couldn't handle that pH swing when it lowers the pH. And by the time I had tested it, it had already gone back up. And so that was the only thing we could find that had happened. No one's fault. You can't really prevent that. So it just, it's just kind of what it was. And I always, once you kind of go through the stages of grief, I kind of look at it as an opportunity as well, right? There's an opportunity to maybe do something differently, that maybe you wanted to do something different with that tank and you couldn't because you had that fish, or, once you kind of get through the grieving process, obviously. But another thing, I've lost a few to the disease part of it as well, and it's because I didn't quarantine, didn't follow the good practices. But I mean, I think one of the things, kind of a preventative measure, is to have the medicine on hand. Like the Med Trio, salt, those kind of things on hand, so you can at least start treating something. Or if you're running salt water, have copper, formalin, those kind of things on hand, so that you can go ahead and use, have those, just grab it off the shelf and use it, depending on what disease you're dealing with. No one's perfect at diagnosing those, but if you have something, have something that you can use instead of having to wait for it or go to the store. That ease of it and being prepared from a medical perspective as well is something that's pretty important.
Yeah, I think that's all. I mean, that's all great points for sure. Kind of piggybacking off from what Mike was saying with regard to medication. So when you think about different medications, depending on manufacturer, that can get a bit overwhelming. One thing, without sitting here and start getting super scientific and super nerdy, as I often can, anybody that knows me on a personal basis, outside of the realm of social media, I can get pretty involved and very nerdy out on talking about gram negative, gram positive, and understanding the differences between the type of bacteriums that are happening and the type of outbreaks that may be potentially happening within a specific ecosystem or what have you. And with that being said, a lot of the stuff that you're going to find is actually gram negative. Um, but again, it could be gram positive. So you got to realize the type of medication that you're doing is just by doing some good research, getting a good understanding of different types of issues, because we could spend weeks just talking about different opportunities that can happen to, whether if that's outdoors in an outdoor setting and or an indoor setting. So how you go about reacting, and one of the things I really want to just make note of is anybody that I can't speak for Mike, but I know for myself here on this channel is from that standpoint of offering insight in how to go about medicating is just something I won't do from a hobbyist and or a business standpoint. It's one of the benefits, I guess. I have helped people where I physically have gone, and I'm not putting it out there because I'm not going to do that. But people that know me just on that level, I have gone out of my way. I've actually traveled, and have done various things because I can see with my own eyes, I can physically test it. Is I have everything I need to test, and I have what I need on hand. Because the last thing I want to see is by offering that type of information. Um, and again, I know most people here in chat can probably understand, but people that are maybe not familiar with that sort of thing or this channel and that type of information could end up not doing it appropriately. And unfortunately, then let's say worst case scenario, they end up having a catastrophe because they followed Jeremy over here on Sergeant Tank, but they didn't actually follow everything. And even again, there's still variables or picking on Mike, if he shared something that has worked for him. That's why probably don't see a lot of that here on the interwebs. That's why you got to do your research. I mean, if it's something really, really extravagant, of course, you could go to like an aviary and or aquatic type veterinarian that deals with specifically with aquatic pets. And always reach out to them if it's something that you kind of want to put your mind at ease. I have an outstanding relationship with our own veterinarian. They did not deal with specifically aquatic, but they've let me quite a few years back. I don't know. I shared that before. Is talking about. I put out a video of identification and some preventative measures to a point when it comes to allobiosidae of various shrimp. And one of the things that was nice is they have a several $1,000 microscope. I have a microscope here, but it's nothing to that extent. And it was nice because I actually turned into a little training seminar for his staff there. So that was pretty cool. That was several years back. But again, that's something that I really enjoy learning and enjoy evolving. And I'm not claiming to be a veterinarian or anything like that. It's just something hands-on practical experiences I personally have always talked about is the most important thing. I know what works for me and what works well. And again, what works for me may not work for one of you guys or somebody else that might watch this later on. That's why I don't really dive too much. I just want to kind of put that out there. So I'm going to turn it over and you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where, at least try to have the basic stuff on hand, I guess. And then like from there, obviously, there's there's the aquatic vet classes that were out there. Watch some of those. I mean, like if you don't know what you're looking at in the microscope, you can't really know what to treat. And so it's one of those, you know, it's an experience thing too, right? And, one thing that works for me may not work for someone else, but it's definitely good to have at least something on hand, so you can react to it instead of like again waiting.
Let us know how does audio sound right now. Can you just guys give us a thumbs up in the chat if it's okay, if it's bearable? I guess. Um, you know, let me know, because I personally will go back, and I actually watch, and I advise this, and this is off topic, but anybody that does any type of content, it is advisable, especially with live streams, even uploaded content, is critique yourself, be objective with yourself, and you have to give yourself a fair assessment. So anytime after a live stream is concluded, even if I don't make it public, it's on list or even private, I will go back once it has processed, and I will actually watch different parts of it and pick out different areas. Is it a visual distraction? Is there sounds in the background between family that's here? Because you got to keep in mind, I'm not off somewhere. This is all within our home, so it can make it a bit challenging. But yeah, so we're going to turn our attention to chat. I'm not even sure. We're at about 36 minutes, so we'll pick it up to about an hour or so, you guys. That's typically what we do. At this point, if you guys have any questions, this is where I like to open up the dialogue, keep things going for the next 20 minutes or so here on the channel. And if I don't have an answer for you, I'm going to flat out tell you I don't know. Yeah, so we do our best here to try to provide some insight, whatever the case might be. But at this point, feel free to go ahead and put any questions that you may have, even if it isn't necessarily related. This is where we're kind of opening it up to you guys. This was a very last minute impromptu live stream, so we didn't come prepared with a bunch of notes and scripts and all that good stuff.
Sounds like Maple Street's got one.
Is Mike with any? Oh, leaving with any livestock today? So I'll let you get.
I think that's a TBD question. We have not discussed anything that I'm leaving with at the moment. Kind of, I guess what I'll say, I'm kind of doing a little bit of a project in the fish barn right now, kind of rearranging some things. So we'll see.
That's fun. That's not fun at all. Anyways, I'm like, there's a delay, and I'm clicking back and forth, and it's lagging. But so I'm gonna turn that back. Do you have something in mind? I mean, he didn't really look through too much, you guys. I mean,
yeah, I haven't looked yet.
I don't even know if he had anything in mind.
I had kind of browsed through a little bit, but maybe I'll, before I leave, obviously kind of take another walkthrough, and we'll see what we can do. So, but it's definitely good to see other people's fish rooms. I always like coming here or anywhere else to see how other people set things up. You can always learn something. So it's definitely one of those things for sure. So, hey, Bentley, how's it going?
Bentley, it's always great to see you in the chat, buddy. I hope that you've been well. So yeah,
am I unmuted?
You are unmuted, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so definitely it's one of these. I'm just going to rant for not rant, but it's one of those things where it's like going back to what we were talking about. It's just kind of go through your system and see where it can fail, and then try to find at least one, if not 2 to 3 ways to solve that problem if you can. So yeah, Bentley's at work. Yeah, I've been there before. It's not fun. So hopefully we're keeping you entertained while you're grinding away there.
We got Joel G in the house. How you doing, buddy? It's always great to see you in here. So yeah, anybody is popping in, we are about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll go ahead and conclude it. But yeah, if anybody is just chiming in here, feel free to go ahead and put. It doesn't necessarily even have to be related to the topic. Again, we don't go off the script here. We enjoy the adventure and the spontaneousness of doing these YouTube lives for you on the fly. But yeah, So we're just letting chat catch up. There's always that awkward moment when you have this hesitation and this pause of like, are they going to say anything? You got to keep in mind there's about a 15 or 20-second delay, unfortunately. Have you guys been acquiring any new livestock since COVID? And if so, from who or how? So, I've acquired a few. I guess since the mic is on me, I might as well very briefly. I acquired some opportunistic shell dwellers. So um, let me. So the first ones I obtained, of course, from my buddy Chris Carpenter. If you guys aren't aware, he's a staple in the hobby when it comes to specifically shell dwellers. But you guys got to keep in mind he's done well more than that. He is personally when it comes to Breeders of War program. I'm trying to get him to that 150 mark this year, so you'll be at 150 spawns of various species since he started with the Grand Valley Aquarium Club, which is, of course, my local aquarium club. And so I acquired some Eclampologus the Maltese. I acquired some Similis, some Ornipinus, and some Richardi that I just acquired from Mike. So that's going to kind of put me in that realm. And again, not all of them are true, as far as opportunistic shell dwellers. But obviously, the Maltese, they really love shells. And, I actually moved them to a new system, so I'm excited. They're finally mature enough. I acquired a group of 6 originally, and I got them when they're really small. So I personally enjoy getting fish, and I've always preached on that. Again, that's where the adaptation and conditioning comes in. I'd much rather get them juvenile and watch them raise up and kind of condition them to where I want them to be, and then let them, for lack of better terms, rearrange the furniture in the tank. Other than that, for me, really isn't much. I don't think there's much else I've acquired. Since the whole pandemic, I definitely miss, and I'm sure I'm speaking for Mike here as well. I definitely miss the club activities and the auctions and that sort of thing. But I'll let you answer this question.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, like Jeremy said, I do miss the auctions and swaps and all that stuff. Those are always a lot of fun. I've kind of used it as an opportunity for me. It's kind of presented an interesting opportunity because I'm working from home and I haven't left the house. Basically, I mean, I've left the house, but you know what I mean, since March. So over a year ago, almost a year ago now, is I can do aquabid and I can order stuff and it doesn't matter when it comes because I'm home. So it's kind of been an interesting little opportunity to get some more fish. And so over the last year, it's been various things. Some shell dwellers. A lot of those are on the channel now. The swordtails, live bears. Recently, I did do some aquabid stuff. Getting some Xiphophorus cuccianus, which are the Monterey platy, which is an extinct species. Some other strains of Variatus. Various things, some of the plecos that you guys have seen. I actually did have a fan reach out and offered me some free fish that he was going to rehome. And so I did get some more Geophagus species and some other fish from that, which you guys haven't seen yet. But that's definitely one that's going to be, it's pretty interesting to see, that aspect of it. It's kind of been a benefit, even though I do miss the swaps, the auctions, seeing folks. It's been kind of an interesting way to get some species that I might not have gotten otherwise. Because that way I'm home, I can get the fish in. And it gives, and I don't have to schedule it with work and then have it not show up and things like that. And then, so it's been, in a way, good for me in that aspect. But I do miss miss that part of it, the going and, getting fish and going to the auction and doing that part.
So Zen Ginger put on here, looked, I'm taking a looking back at their personal mistakes is, again, it comes through trial and error oftentimes, you guys. Everybody goes through different things in life in general, especially here in the hobby. I mean, you have to realize, and that's why I always talk about the importance of treating each one of your system as its own science project, because you may think you have everything together, and you may have 10 variations of redundancy throughout your fish room or fish rooms, and you realize very quickly that each one of them is going to have some slight variables. But yeah, so I mean, just looking at this statement here, looking back at the mistakes, and determine really needing 2 generators and 2 linear air pumps to avoid potential losses as far as hundreds of fish. Again, so again, my heart goes out to, in that situation. I can relate. Again, I shared with you guys a little bit ago a couple of different instances, and that's only a couple of instances. Of course, that was what I would consider one of the more catastrophic instances. But I've lost my fair share. Just this week, again, I don't necessarily sit there and go on YouTube, but I have no problem admitting, and that's where hopefully you guys can learn from, and I'm sure for Mike and a lot of us. It's not that I intentionally don't want to disclose that information. Why would I put out a video and try to get views and clicks by, making a crazy thumbnail and putting, suffered losses and that sort of thing? It's not my style. But I'll tell you right now, I've been raising up and got them from a buddy of mine who's well known within the hobby. And they were the Synodontis multipentatus. And they're a parasitic spawner, and one I was conditioning and adapting to eventually get to the point. And guess what? About 3-4 days ago, I went there. Every one of them were dead. I had them in with some Symphotilapia frontosa, the neon blue Hellenby variant, and they're just doing well together because I'm raising them both up, not necessarily using the frontosa as a parasitic spawn as a host spawner, but just growing up within that ecosystem. I was fortunate enough because I've raised those up. Both of them are raised up from young, but even the frontosa, those I raised up from regulars, all the way up to now they're about 4.5, 5 inches, some of them, and I have a group of 6 in there. So what ended up happening is I have 2 box filters on either side in this specific system, and unfortunately the air overnight, and that's why you guys going back, and that's something to really keep in mind, the importance of redundancy when you're going through and you're checking your systems. You can ask my own family here. In the middle of the night, I will make a spontaneous loop around the fish room. I have prevented so many opportunities by just doing periodic checks, especially the amount of investment and time that a lot of us have, and for myself, within our own fish rooms, is by identifying something. Unfortunately, in that specific situation, I didn't identify it until later the next morning after lights. We run on a light schedule of 12 hours, 8 to 8, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And what ended up happening is basically it was acting as a suffocation. Is that's where duckweed or Sylvania, a floating type, vegetation that you may have, it does its pros and cons. But one thing I can tell you, even with ponds, that's why I like water hyacinth, the water lettuce, and a number of different things outdoors can cause issues. That's why when you look at like water hyacinth, water lettuce, it can be considered like an invasive species of plant because of the fact it can overwhelm and it can suffocate not only other vegetation, but your stock. There was no oxygen exchange whatsoever. I mean, my frontosa were literally up. So I did what I needed to. They're doing phenomenally well, which I am very happy about. But you know what? Did I let it discourage me? Absolutely not. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for so many years now. It sucks. It sucks more from the standpoint is you don't want to see anything suffer or have those sort of losses. And it's not even from a monetary standpoint. I don't even want to tell you what I know that those are worth. But again, I was looking forward. I mean, they were pretty close to maturity where I could start looking at using them as a breeding group. But I'll eventually get some more in the future. They are kind of a challenging one. You don't see them too often. But with that being said, it just gives you a prime example. Just within the last week myself, we have losses. So take it from me. Make sure that you check. Make sure you air, even with redundancy, and make sure if you are having some, floating like duckweed or Sylvania minima or something like that, floating on the top, specifically a duckweed, I know for a fact it causes depletion in oxygen exchange. So, yeah.
I mean, the one thing I'll add to that too is even the best, even the scientists lose fish. I mean, there's people out there, who, who've bred saltwater tanks, for example. I mean, they've just killed more fish than you have. I mean, that's one of the things to keep in mind is the experts, which I would never say I'm an expert, but the experts have just killed more fish than you have, and they've learned from those mistakes and learned from those experiences, and that's led them to the successes that they've had. Is that they've just flat out killed. They'll say that to you personally. At least they'll be like, "Hey, I've just killed more fish than anyone else." And that's something to keep in mind too, from from a mental standpoint. Is this is just part of the game? If you look at fish keeping as a game, is this part of the game? Say if you play sports, occasionally I used to play goalie in soccer many years ago, and you know what? I had a ball go through my legs one time. I went to catch it, went right between my legs, right into the goal, and you just got to get back and save the next one.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's all you can do. I mean, that's what research and development and science, especially when it comes to pets, aquatic pets, aquatic organisms. You go through a lot of um, trials, and of course, there's a lot of adversity to that. But obviously, and you got to keep in mind, you may very well look at certain pasilids and other types of fish within your specific systems and be like, I've done that for 20, 25 years with duckweed. You got to keep in mind each various specimen that you're talking about has different types of requirements when it comes to swim bladders and different types of air within their trying to think the easiest way to put it as far as with their swim bladders. And I can tell you firsthand from keeping various types of catfish, even like lower carids, depletion of oxygen exchange, especially at the depth of that tank, being about 21 inches from top to bottom, with that duckweed can cause, and of course I have since removed. It provides a good buffering component to help stabilize some of the overall nitrogen, which of course ammonia, but helping balance out and sustaining that nitrogen cycle to help kind of consume some of those, things within that system. But yeah, I mean, you live and you learn. I can tell you, it will not be my last time. That's the reality of it for any one of us that keeps any type of pets. I mean, life, obviously, what is it? You're going to have your ups and downs, and there's life and death. I mean, that's the reality of it. So, the main thing is I see a lot of people get discouraged, unfortunately, when they go through any type of loss, is they tend to take it way too personal. Unfortunately, it hurts to see when I see a lot of hobbyists that go just full board into wanting, and they've only kept maybe one or two tanks their entire life, and they're like, seeing with social media, and I'm kind of picking on social media here from that standpoint, is you have to really scale it back. That's why I always tell you guys just to focus on for a year and a half or two, really understand all that you can and realize that mistakes are still going to happen. Things are still going to, unfortunately, happen with this hobby. Just like Mike pointed out, even from a scientist point of view, and I'm not claiming to be that, neither is he. But I'm just saying you're still going through your trials and tribulations. You're still going to have your ups and downs. And now I know to maybe check that, 4 or 5 other times and make sure that the air is properly working and make sure that I don't let the duckweed go crazy in that system. So, again, I don't beat myself up over it. I never have. In all actuality, I more or less kind of put it out of my mind until we're talking about it. Then it was like, man, that pill came right back and it ended up hitting me like a ton of bricks. So, Zen Ginger said, lost hundreds of guppies, some really pretty strains, lost half my baby angels, plus a few random tetras, barbs, whatnot. So many times, so many little bodies that couldn't take the cold. Yeah, I'm truly sorry to hear that you went through that experience. Again, we've all encountered it. It's I can't say it ever necessarily gets easier, but you do learn to adapt and find ways. And that's why I go back to you guys. That's why getting additional bloodline and having individuals, friends through local aquarium clubs. And we're blessed here in Michigan. I mean, he can even tell you, coming from saltwater side, even over to the freshwater side, or vice versa. I mean, we are fortunate to where we have the means, in a sense, to have other hobbyists who are, chances are, have that lineage, or even adding maybe some genetic diversity, adding maybe a new bloodline within that species or that family of fish that we're working with. Is redundancy is key. That's why a lot of the stuff, I mean, I'm sure as Mike is even walking through, um, and seeing things in the fish room, he and I'm speaking for him. I don't know if that's the case, but I know other people have come over here in the past. They're like, "Why don't you have that on your site? That would sell." And it's like, I hoard stuff for a reason. I want to not only support our local clubs, our swap meets, our auctions, that sort of thing. When it comes to those type of events, but also I'm looking at from the standpoint, I want my bloodline to try to stay local in case something like that happens.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that.
So, and that's why a lot of us that have been doing this for any period of time talk about the importance of redundancy.
I was just going to. Are you? I was just going to go ahead and say that. I mean, for example, is if you go, have a local friend where you can give a couple of strings of your guppies, even if you just give it to them, then you can get it back. A lot of saltwater people do this with corals. They'll get a rare coral, they'll grow it out, frag it, give it to a friend of theirs, and if their tank crashes, they're like, "Hey, can I get a piece of that back?" So you can still have it, restarted. For example, Jeremy has some of my Santa Maria antlers. So say I lost my Santa Maria antlers, it'd be like, "Hey, Jeremy, can I get some more?" It's just kind of how that, get involved in your local community so that way you can get it back if something ever would happen to you. And then also, I do want to talk about automation a little bit because I'm a fan of automation, but there is an element of it that you still have to keep an eye on things as well. Automation can be good and it can kill you as well. So it's one of those things where you still need to do the checks to make sure things are working. Is the auto water change working? Is there's still some maintenance aspects to that. I am a fan of automation, but there's still some elements of that where you still have to be observant. And so, as much as it does run itself, you still have to observe your system, make sure things are running correctly, so you don't run into issues that can cause these mass incidents. And then Catastic was asking, has Mike had any mass losses? And I really think that it's not mass in terms of like systems like Jeremy was talking about. It was more mass, like a tank crash. Like, for example, like my 180-gallon saltwater tank crashed where, the CO2 happened. I mean, that's a different aspect of it for sure. For me, it's like I haven't had the mass loss. I mean, could it happen? Yeah, I could go home and the fish barn could have no heat. And then guess what? It's, it could be game over, right? I mean, it's warmer today, but still, I mean, those things happen. So, I mean, I really haven't had a mass casualty event. I mean, I've had tanks crash, but I've not had the mass of thousands of fish. One thing I will say is if you take from the Clap Saddles videos from Goliath Farm, is I've noticed that he's taken a very like scientific view of it. Like he's not been very like you don't see a lot of emotion if you listen to those. He's been very matter of fact. This is what happened. This is how I solve it. This is what we're gonna do. And then he's just kind of like just dealing with the situation, at least on camera. I mean, obviously off camera it could be different, but he's taking a very methodical approach to it. He go vat by vat. You can't conquer Rome in a day, or you can't build Rome in a day. So if you have that mass casualty event, you just have to take it by what you can control and do the simplest things first, or triage it and say, hey, this is the worst thing, and you just go down until you solve it and kind of get it back to where it's normal, call it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I couldn't have said it better there. Zen Ginger, I know better now. Live in Houston, of course. I mean, obviously being in that within the United States, being in Texas, being in that area, you don't expect to being encountered with those sort of elements from a weather standpoint. So I know it affected quite a few people. So again, hearts go out to everybody there. Definitely, it's a tough pill to swallow for sure. Also determined I never want to live anywhere near Mike up towards the frozen. Well, yeah, we both obviously born and raised, and I believe Mike was as well in Michigan, and we're not too far where we're at from Lake Michigan. So of course we're gonna. It's I don't want to make humor and comical out of something that took place, in other states. But yeah, for us, once it starts, I know for me, this past week, getting my kids from school, I want to say it probably peaked to about 38 degrees, and I literally had the AC on in our vehicle because I was warm. Um,
I'm in shorts.
so I mean, yeah, being born and raised, and again, people don't realize the temperatures even lately the last few years, especially in our area, and I'm sure for you as well, it gets brutal hot and dry in the summertime. Like, I mean, it's not uncommon for us to get well over 100 degrees. Like, I think sometimes people misunderstand, thinking being more in the northern part of the U.S., being, close to Canada, being that sort of thing, that we don't encounter some of those ups and downs. But yeah, I mean, we deal with all the four seasons legitimately. So, but yeah, I appreciate it very much for each and every one of you guys definitely hanging out with us. We're just past the hour mark. If Mike has any closing remarks, I'm going to turn the floor over to him in a moment. Again, our hearts go out to everybody there. Anybody that has dealing on top of the whole pandemic situation that's happening in all of these different weather changes and that sort of thing. So hopefully we can all rise above it and continue. That's why I always put in the end to keep on keeping on, because that's really all that you can do. I mean, you can either beat yourself up, try to go back and change it, which we know that that's not the reality of the situation. But hopefully you guys could take something away from it, even if it was a small part, and realize that everybody deals with their own battles. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, let you close things out. Again, thank you guys so much. After this is done, I will go ahead and link up anything pertinent to what we discussed here in this live stream for you guys, so you can check it out later and support in whatever way that you can. So.
I think Jeremy closed it out pretty well. So, I mean, like I said, you just got to keep going. I have a phrase occasionally I'll use. It's like, kind of survive in advance, kind of using the sports analogy again. And occasionally you got to win a little ugly. So, that's kind of what I've got for the end.
All right, you guys. And with that being said, as always, you got to do your best. Stay encouraged. Keep on keeping on. And happy fish keeping. We'll talk to you guys on the next one.